That would be me. So I apologize. I am standing in for Dave today, who was unable to join us. And so Carolyn, I just want to check with you. Are we ready to start?
You're ready. Go right ahead.
All right, fantastic. Thanks. So I'm calling to order the April 19th, 2021 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20-A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. A quorum appears to be present, and the Architectural Review Board members here today electronically are myself, Fred Missel, Frank Hancock, Chris Henningsen, and Frank Stoner. And as I mentioned, Dave Vanderwerf is absent. Opportunities for public access to this meeting are posted on the county's website at the county calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone, both as provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This online meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it's your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. Everyone who is participating today it is good practice to mute your microphone until it's your turn to speak. Applicants who are making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Carolyn will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. So starting with disclosures, do any of the ARB members have anything to disclose? I do not.
No.
No.
All right, great, thank you. Carolyn, are there any members of the public that want to make a comment about a project that's not on the agenda for review?
Not at this time, no.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to the consent agenda. It's nice to see everybody on the screen in addition to the ARB members. There is one consent agenda item today, ARB 2021-28, Biscuit Run Park Initial Site Plan. If the ARB wants the final plan and architecture for this project to be reviewed by staff instead of the full ARB, based on the limited amount of development proposed, this could be mentioned. Oh, that's the note to me. Alternatively, we can bring this question to the ARB when the final plan is submitted. Note, staff will not have a presentation prepared. So with that, is there anyone who wants to call this up from the consent agenda?
No.
All right. Doesn't appear that anybody does. Is there anyone who wants to move that to make a motion for to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to we approve the consent agenda.
Second? Great. And a vote, please, Carolyn.
I didn't see who seconded.
That was me.
Okay, no problem. Okay, Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
and Mr. Missel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for joining us. This is a pretty quick presentation that you made. We appreciate it. Dave, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Under regular review items, there are no regular review items today, and there are no work sessions scheduled for today. There is one other business item, and that is a discussion of the bypass, Route 29-250 bypass, led by myself. And if you all are ready for that, I am happy to share my screen. Margaret, am I missing anything that you wanted to cover? All right. Give me 1 second, please. All right. Great. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Great. All right. So I'll just open by saying somehow I have chosen the most, well, the stretches of entrance corridors that have the least amount of architecture on them. So I'm not sure why I did that, but it has become apparent that that is the case. But I also was struck on this entrance corridor by the amount of buffers that are kind of naturally built in on both sides of the road. So I will walk us through this, and please interrupt if there are any questions. And if you will just give me 1 second, for some reason, I am unable to see the participants. Okay. So the distance is about 4.1 miles, and the start is on the north side by the Best Buy. That seemed like the best landmark, even though it's not in the county. And then moving down to the west and to the south. Everyone's very familiar with this stretch of road. It ended at the intersection of Route 64 and the bypass. Obviously punctuated by 5 intersections. First one being the major intersection on 29, the second one being Leonard Sanders Drive, the third one being the intersection of Route 250 and Old Garth Road and Old Ivy, and then moving down to Fontaine Avenue, and finally the intersection at 64. Just for interest, I pulled the average daily trips along this stretch of road. And as I expected, because this is my commute most times, back when I did actually commute further than just into this room, I actually was somewhat surprised. 58,000 average daily trips on the stretch between 29 and 250, 52,000. You can see here on the stretch up to Fontaine. Then it increases to 55,000, probably a lot of folks exiting the city by Fontaine. And by comparison, along 64, the stretch on the bottom of this page here is actually has less average daily traffic than the stretch between Old Garth or 250 business and 29 to the north. This is just a summary of some of the zoning characteristics as you go through here, a mixture of primarily residential, a little bit of high density residential in this area, a small amount of commercial office, and then coming through a large stretch of mix of sort of residential on the right-hand side, low density residential essentially on both sides, and then Lewis Mountain, a lot of wooded landscape to the east. And then continuing down, as we discussed, I think a couple weeks ago, the Fontaine Avenue piece, and eventually to Route 29 with a small piece of highway commercial zoned here at the end of at the intersection of 64 and 250. So I felt like, since it's a relatively straightforward and simple stretch of road, I felt like it might be easiest just to take a look at it using aerials and a few snapshots from the ground, because quite honestly, it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of visibility of structures along the way. So beginning with Best Buy that you see here on the far left and also at the bottom of the screen, and then moving to the southwest, there is quite a long stretch, as you all know, of sound wall, sound protection, and it continues. In fact, this aerial, I think, was done at the time that was being constructed, from what I can tell. Continues down to Leonard Sanders Drive, almost. And then as we continue further, we get to the intersection of Leonard Sanders Drive. And again, this is, there's sort of very distant views through some of the landscape to the Darden parking garage, and also a little bit to the Darden School, but for the most part, it's completely hidden, as you know. Continuing down, we get to a point where you can see University Village condos a bit in the distance, but it's also very far away. And also then to the right or to the west, some of the St. Anne's Belfield development. Then as you approach the Ivy intersection, you can see a bit more construction and development in this general area. Still very well screened from the road. And continuing down, this is the Fontaine Avenue intersection. And you can see the Fontaine Research Park. Again, some areas that you can see through to the Advanced Research and Technology building here and to this pieces of Fontaine from a distance, but again, very well screened. And then continuing up to the intersection of Route 64. Obviously, this is a dated drawing, and I've definitely seen an improvement in the traffic with the change to the access point coming in through here to go eastbound on 64. It's definitely helped the backup of traffic along here where there were so many accidents. It felt like there was about one every couple of weeks along there. And that's pretty much it. As I said, it's very straightforward. It's buffered well on both sides by thick vegetation. I think the majority of that is the VDOT right of way. The sound walls are one of the major features, and I don't think we have the ability to weigh in on VDOT designs. I may be wrong on that, Margaret, but I'd be interested to know whether there's a way that we could, since it is such a heavy visual presence, and if those types of sound walls continue into the future because of development and increasing in traffic volumes, might be something to think about if there are dialogues we could have with VDOT and also in terms of the different material uses. Commercial areas clustered primarily at the main intersections, and the majority of the views to the built landscapes are well filtered by vegetation. So I know a very straightforward review. Just stop there and ask if there are any questions, or if there's anything you'd like me to go back at and look at in more detail.
Not for me. Well, that'll look very comprehensive, right? How dated are those ADT numbers?
They were as of, I pulled them up yesterday, and from what I could tell, they were pretty recent.
Okay.
Yeah, there were a few that went back. I think they were 2019, actually, Frank. There were a few that went back to 2012, 2011, and they were more like the 30,000 range. So that gives you kind of a sense of the growth. But VDOT's got a pretty, I think, helpful website. I'll see if I can pull it up again, and if you're interested, I can send it out. But you can just essentially hover over the top of the road, and it gives you the total vehicles per day. And it just, I was thinking about how many, like we talked about, obviously views on the entrance corridors, how many cars actually experience those views. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fred. I just was curious, I guess this is a question for everybody, maybe Margaret in particular, the sound wall, since that does have such an impact on the corridor. Margaret, do you remember ever reviewing that or getting a chance to review those? Or does anybody know the threshold, like when VDOT uses them, or how they come about?
Yeah, those are good questions. I don't know the answers. I can try and find out because I think that's a really good point. They're definitely, it's clear those are very, they have a big visual impact. So it would be good for us to know a little bit more about how that works, so we can see if we've got some input in the future.
Thank you. I was just curious.
I noticed they use the same color. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
I was just going to say, I don't think VDOT's under any obligation to abide by county ARB or any other guideline, as near as I can tell.
I think you're right. I think they use the same color and design for the Rio underpass, right? Those walls are the same.
Yeah.
And it looks like they went back after the fact and painted it.
Painted
So I'm wondering
yeah.
I wonder what the long-term maintenance is going to be like, and if eventually that paint's going to wear off.
That's a good point. That intersection seemed to get a little extra attention. how do you go about getting that extra attention?
Seemed to me that there were some residential properties like, I guess to the west of Best Buy, that the expansion of that on-ramp seemed to be encroaching a little bit further onto those residential properties. So I have to wonder if that sound barrier was kind of a result of that, like just for the benefit of the residences and that neighborhood on the other side there.
I bet you're right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Margaret, I also remember when VDOT had, I don't know whether they asked us or they just showed us the drawings, but no, it wasn't VDOT. It was the airport when they did their signs at the intersection of Airport Road and 29. And I don't think we had the ability to review or comment on those, or maybe just comment, but it seemed like it was a done deal because it was an airport authority, not a county.
Yeah, I think those were being presented basically for information purposes. But, I think on occasion, if, comment could be sought early in the process, and even if they're not required, if somebody is not required to follow the comments, it's possible that they still won't be able to. So we'll see what we can learn, and I'll see what information I can bring back for you.
That's great.
So is this the last western quarter? Right.
I think so.
Oh.
Yeah.
So is the idea now that we would try to codify some guidelines for these together or independently of one another, or how do you see that working?
What we have on our schedule for the next meeting is to discuss what happens next, now that we've done the western corridors, and to have a full discussion about that next time. But we certainly have time today.
I was about to say, yeah, I don't know what our agenda looks like next meeting, but we got some time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you our next agenda has at least 3 regular review items, one initial plan and 2 regular review items.
Does anybody feel like we're ready to talk about it today?
Frank, when you say talk about it, are you saying it just in general, kind of reviewing
Yeah.
where we've come from and what we're
Yeah, just kind of reviewing and trying to get some idea where we need to go.
My only hesitancy with that is that Dade is not with us here today, and he, I think, not only reviewed a couple of those reaches, but might also have some interesting insight into how to go about that. But I'm open.
Good point. Margaret, what are your thoughts about, I guess it'd be helpful to get some guidance from you as to how you see this evolving.
Well, I did not prepare an answer for that today. I feel like Dade sort of had a plan, and sort of relying on him to sort of guide us into the next step. I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we are hoping to hire a planner that has some urban design or graphics skills. We haven't gotten through that process yet, but that if we get that person in place, we'll have someone who can help us with the guidelines update. That person will have some time to devote to the guidelines update, so that's a good thing.
When do they come on board?
Don't
know.
Soon.
It's tough out there. Hard to find people.
Is that a wish or yeah,
All of the above.
yeah, okay.
We're working on it. We're just not quite there yet. So I don't have a good answer for you today. I feel like I need to sit back and look through all the presentations again that have been done and see where that takes us and how what is the best way to translate that into useful information that we can use in our reviews on a daily basis.
I kind of thought of this, and this was just my view, that each corridor would be distilled and from these presentations and from our discussions, maybe into like a one-sheeter, kind of like a profile that, and I don't know where I got this or if I just come up with this, but I thought of this whole exercise as like creating an appendix to the guidelines and not necessarily rewriting any of the guidelines, but more of like a tool for applicants and a tool for staff to kind of improve communication or just here's some examples. And so that's the way I've just kind of been thinking about this whole thing is like, how do you take each presentation, each corridor and condense all that down, or what's the essence of it? And what's, I always like to think of, can we get it down to one sheet? But that's my 2 cents.
I think that sounds great. That's I think that's a good way of describing sort of what we were talking about early on. Just sounds like that could be really useful.
Yeah, I guess I thought part of the goal was to sort of eliminate this one-size-fits-all approach. Whether we could do that with a one-page addendum saying, oh, if you happen to be in this particular corridor, here are the supplemental guidelines, or here adjust the following, or I don't know. But is that kind of what you were thinking as well?
I think with both the Frankston works together well and would be very useful.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is driven by the context conversation. So often, we review something and say contextually, this makes a lot of sense because of the adjacent, whatever it is, industrial properties or industrial character. And so this, I think, gives us more tools to like guide an application or here, refer to this. This is kind of how, we looked at this corridor and kind of saw it this way. Instead of pulling like a certain language that might not relate to a specific corridor, but
I could see where each one of these one pages, you could start out with just a very basic or very brief description of the overall character of the corridor. And then everyone very successfully broke the corridors down into segments. And we might even be able to do that graphically and show what those segments are, and then just add the descriptors, what the differences are in those segments that, that's really what context is changing to point out what those differences are. And then maybe, you could even just bullet if there are good examples for people to look at, just, have a list, short list. It would be something that's really easy to look at and breaks it down, and that might work.
Yeah, I'd maybe suggest a couple things. One is I was just kind of refreshing my memory and looking back through some previous information, Margaret, that you'd sent the group. And it may be good to send some of this to Chris as well, because it was back in October of last year. And I don't think, Chris, you were on at that point. And it was images of historic precedents. You guys probably remember this, I'm sure. And then some guidelines and a status recap. which was sort of helpful to see. And in there, Margaret, you suggested we might attempt to identify significant, say, elements of each building that are relevant to current architecture in the entrance corridors. And so I think that's kind of where it started to, that the idea started to come up, and where we started thinking about reviewing the actual entrance corridors and some of their architectural features. And maybe what we might want to do, Frank, to your point about, having this discussion, Margaret, when you and Dave feel like it's appropriate, we have a work session. And, maybe you and Dave or some of us get together in advance of that to kind of chart out an agenda for that. And then we all can kind of discuss it, and sort of not only what we've done, what are the key characteristics, the summary of some of the findings we did from the standpoint of architecture and cultural landscape or whatever it is, but then also how does this then inform the guidelines, right? And how do those connections occur? So that could be a good work session item for one of the next couple of agendas, whenever it fits in.
Sounds good.
That's great.
All right. Any other discussion on the entrance corridor? Or?
Were you just reading from an email? Was that?
I was sent on the 10th of October, sorry, the 9th of October, 2020.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. Great. All right. Well, this might be the fastest ARB meeting in history, or at least recent history. Before we end, let me ask for adoption of the April 5th, 2020 ARB meetings. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
A second.
Great. And vote, Carolyn?
All right. Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Missile.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next meeting is a virtual meeting. It'll be on May 3rd. Is everybody thinking they'll be in attendance for that?
Could be.
Great.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. I will look forward to seeing everyone then. Is there any other discussion? All right. I will adjourn. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, you guys do the same.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, everyone.